You're live.
Good evening, everyone. The date is Monday, January 8th, 2024. The time is 6:46 p.m., and I will call to order the meeting of the Cleveland Community Police Commission's Budget and Grants Committee. So the first item of business today will be just the call to order and a roll call. Commissioner Kennedy,
Present.
Commissioner Van Leer,
Present.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson is excused, and Commissioner Zayed is not present at the moment. So essentially, what we'll do today, we will go through our agenda. I know that I presented an agenda to the committee, but I wasn't sure if there was anything additional that anybody thought maybe they wanted to add to the agenda. Okay. So can we just approve the agenda? Is that okay with everyone? This is like a typo that shouldn't be there. All right. So the first item of business will be the executive director report given by executive director Jason Gilbert.
Okay, good evening. Hear me here? All right, so we had asked for, Chair, you had asked for update on the grants. You have two specific questions there. How many have completed and received funds? The answer is received funds, 0, completed 1, and then they asked for a revision, so that has gone back to law department for revision. We sat down last week and went through each one of these, and email is a really hard way to do this. And I think that's part of the problem here is there's a lot of back and forth emails between ourselves, the law department, and the grantees. The status is most of these are somewhere in law review. A few of them are we're still awaiting incomplete information from them. A few of them, we haven't gotten anything back from them, so we have no idea. They've just gone silent on us. For instance, change the narrative. We haven't heard from them. We reached out to them several times. There is another one that they may even be associated. We've heard a couple of times from Joe Black in the reverse ride-along, but when we ask him for a specific thing, so he'll ask for us for an update, we'll reply with, we need some documentation from you, and then we don't hear anything back. So there are a few things in here where, Chair, you and I may have to come up with a plan to reach out and, maybe even send a formal letter saying, we've tried to reach out to you for the past 2 months and give them a timeline or whatever we feel the next steps may be. Some of them, the contract are completed and wanting to be signed, but then once the grantees read the comprehensive contracts, they need some legal advice. We are not able to give them legal advice. So when they have specific legal questions about a provision, our law department cannot offer them legal advice since they are technically at the other side of the table of the contract. So it would be up to them to seek out legal questions on their own. So that is one holdup that has been recurring. Other ones is, as you're aware, the request for hardship. So that's the reason why our one signed contract came back. And they, after they signed it, they realized that it was a reimbursement grant in the contract. And then they asked, well, can we do it another way? And I said, yes, but we have to change the contract. So we have 3 or 4 that are working out their specific details of how they will receive their funding on the timelines that they create. So it's up to them to break their budget down into disbursement plans that they're comfortable with, that allows them to do what they committed to do, get that information to us so that it can be ingrained in contract. So a lot of moving parts. Everybody is making progress, but it's with the exception of a few, but it is slow progress. And we don't know how long it will take to get the funds once they're signed. The city just opened business on the 8th for check cutting again. So, if they're disbursement oriented, they should get their first check as quick as it can be processed once it's in the system. We have no barriers to payment once it's in the system. So,
I guess the only thing I would want to, we don't have to decide now, but we also know that the city will not be supporting us for the grant making position.
So
Go ahead.
there was, are you asking me or do you have more to say on that?
I would want to hear what you have to say, but I was going to say I was going to just throw out there that we maybe come up with a plan about how we want to deal with that.
Yeah. So as you're aware, but for the public, the listening public, the CPC received the city's proposed budget for us, and it went through this committee. And this committee had asked for an additional $150,000 roughly to support this grant program next year. That includes a grant administrator and then some software. We sent that over to the city, letting them know after this committee voted. That was in November. And then in December, once the full commission approved it at their special meeting before the holidays, the entire budget, including the extra $150,000, we sent it to them again as our official request. We got a reply back last week from the director of finance that said the mayor's budget book is going over with the budget request that the mayor wants for the CPC. So they are declining to include our additional funding in their request book. We are allowed to petition council directly. However, the city will not provide any support in how to do that. So the next step for me is I am going to, at some point this week, establish communication with Council President Griffin as quickly as I can and ask them how they would like to formally receive our additional request, right? Because it's about formality for them. And the last thing I want is for us to sit there and them to say, well, this is disqualified because we didn't follow a process correct for submitting it. Never been done before. So we have to flesh out how we make our request directly to council so that they will actually consider that request. Since the mayor's stance is that they are not going to include us, that means we're in competition for that money with the mayor. So just so you know, their budget is a zero-based budget. So every single dollar they anticipate to have next year is accounted for, which doesn't count our $150,000. So the only way council would be able to give that to us is to pull it from their budget and put it in ours. So it puts us in direct competition with the city this year for that $150,000.
Question, when you say pull it from their budget, be the city's budget?
Yeah, they would have to find somewhere to cut. The mayor's going to submit a balanced budget.
So it's not like the city
So-
can add on top?
No, we couldn't.
It's gotta
We
be-
couldn't come up with a revenue source that I'm aware of. It would be, out of general fund money. So we're competing with the mayor for that $150,000. So my recommendation stands. The plan that we came up with last time to go to council and talk about the grants in general to see what their wishes are, see how they feel about this grant program. The other conversation I think that should be entertained, I had spoken to the co-chairs this morning, is the option of seeing if we can outsource this. I think, the one thing we've learned about this is when you look at the ARPA money that was sent over to Cleveland Foundation, they set up a $10 million fund. They give out $1 million a year. It's very similar parameters to ours. And if you look at their awardee list, they were able to do it in a very short period of time. They got their money out there already. And if you look at the awardee list, it's a kudos to you all because, as much criticism as we heard about, some people being amateurs and not able to make decisions and concerned about that. Well, the professional foundation pretty much selected almost exactly the same grantees that we did. So it's telling that we did a great job. So the question being, if both of us are doing the same thing, why waste so much time, energy, and resource from this commission if we could, quite frankly, maybe outsource it, put it in the same fund, let that money all work together, possibly even matriculate into bigger money if it's workable. So it's something to be considered is asking the legal question if we can do that. The way that, if you wanted to ask that legal question of law, it would come from this committee as a request for me to pursue that, right? Is an analysis of how can we do that if that's what we chose to do, if it's even possible.
Yeah.
But it might be something to consider because even if we get this money, we wouldn't have it to spend in this next grant cycle. So we're going to have to do this all by ourselves again, and coming up, and we're going to have to do it faster and better than we did it before. And those grantees, having been through the Cleveland Foundation process, have come back to us and said, why is your process so difficult comparatively, right? And that's a telling sign. And unfortunately, we have to do the contract that we have to do. Cleveland Foundation doesn't have that same requirement because they don't have it's not making a contract with the city any longer, it's through a third party. So something to consider, I think that discussion's worth having.
So it would just be one contract if it were with Cleveland Foundation, the
Yeah.
city, they would have to approve that.
And I don't think you'd have to give up your ability to decide. So if you're letting them run the applications, push them through, give you a list of recommendations, right? I think the law, basically says, and this is just my opinion, that you have to make the final decision, right? But
Right.
there's no reason that they can't send over a vetted list and you guys can make them and spend much less of your time debating that than you did this past week. So.
Yeah, I think to get the process started, if we need to start asking how to make that work, we should probably go ahead.
I agree. Government grant funding is just really difficult to administer across the board. And this process, especially with the reimbursement piece, I think that is just unacceptable. To expect grantees, especially of this size, to be reimbursed, that one really rubs me the wrong way. So I would really love to see if we could get some more information about this. I think that we should still, as Jason was saying, make the decisions. We should still conduct interviews, but other than that, I think outsourcing it to an organization like the Cleveland Foundation would really improve the experience for all involved.
I would support this as well for the reasons that have been stated. We're still going to have to deal with some of the things we dealt with. Like, I think we'll still have to go through the conflict of interest thing because we still would be voting and that will still be a part of the process. So some of the things won't go away. But my other concern is we were fortunate that our committees were kind of just getting started, our policing committees. And so, they were just kind of getting, laying their foundation. And I think that's going to be different this year. I think there's going to be, as the accountability committee really gets going, policies moving now, training's got to go to another phase of that committee. And I just think I don't think we would have the time. I don't even know how we would do it with the workload that we have coming up this year. So I would be supportive of, a motion to at least give Jason, the green light to pursue the questions that he needs answered so that we can come up with a plan with how we move forward.
I second.
He didn't make a motion.
What?
So I think we should be clear on what exactly we're making a
I
motion.
second the green light.
I think we're all in agreement. We just need to kind of come up with language. So what is the language is to authorize, or is that, do we need authorizations? Executive director to ask the law department for clarity on, whether or not we can do that. We could just outsource this by, do we want to name the Cleveland Foundation or?
No, just if it's even possible.
Just
Is
outsource.
it possible
Yeah.
for us to outsource?
Just to give the money to another entity to manage the process as long as we make the final decisions. Given what you said was right about the conflict, there would still have to be aware of
Yeah,
that.
we'll just have to do some things, but I don't want us to have to do this again.
Yeah, right. So I would make a motion to authorize the executive director to ask the law director for his legal opinion as to whether or not we can outsource our grant function as long as we maintain decision-making authority.
I second.
Is there any debate?
Does this need to go to the full commission, or can you get started on it?
I can get started with some questions.
So we'll just take the vote. Commissioner Kennedy,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Leer,
Aye.
and Commissioner Adams, aye. So motion passes unanimously. And go get him, Jason. All right. So, is there anything else from your end, Jason?
We still will, while we're doing that, pursue the other avenues. So, I'm still gonna encourage us to meet with council. I'm still going to, it's already been voted to fight for that extra funding, so we will make sure we pursue each option diligently. Thank you.
I do have one more question. Has there ever been a scenario, because I'm wondering, say for example, I know you talked about maybe we can maybe contract someone for the assistance, but my understanding is that we wouldn't be able, we need council to create this position for us. Is that correct?
We don't need council to create the position. We need the funding to be able to do that. If we were to have staff on board here, we need additional funding.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So another question that maybe we should be talking to a lot more about then would be, whichever way that opinion goes in terms of just outsourcing, whether or not we can use some of that money that is allocated for grant funding to hire somebody, right? So that would be, while you're at it, let's do that as well.
Yeah, so we'll explore that. I think your motion is clear enough
Clear
to
enough.
explore the options. Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, that should be one of the
Yeah, it's
potential
one of the
options. Yeah.
one of the things. But we can do that. There's no doubt about that we could contract with a consultant to help that process if
Yeah.
that's the avenue we chose. But I think we're looking for something a little bit bigger, and a little bit more permanent arrangement, so we don't have to re-up that contract constantly. It could be on a term though. It could be like 4 years with a reassessment. Whatever it may be. But there's other ways to approach it, which I'm not going to. I have a plan, like Plankton and SpongeBob. I have a plan Z. So I mean, I have other avenues if we run into hurdles at any of these to try to not make this 2023 grant experience the same.
The other question, sorry, would it be appropriate to have a conversation with some potential external partners at this point, or
Not
they're
yet. We have to see first legally if it's
okay.
possible. And I think I'm going to frame the question like, how can we, to see, and if the answer is you can't, then that's something. But I'm really looking towards how can we do this.
And I did talk to a community member who said that, because it was one of the grantees, and I was having a conversation with them just about the process and everything. And they also had mentioned something similar. And I think, that they were saying that they would maybe be able to connect us to some people as well. So we do have some support from people in the community who want to see this guy. I think we all want to see the program better. So I think we're all on the same page with that. But we also have to always stay within the parameters of what we can do legally.
And I think I still say kudos to you all for getting the money out. And I think we had to go through this as a learning experience to really understand what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just building off what Jason just said, my understanding is that bodies like this typically don't do this. So what I'm saying is there's no roadmap or standard for how this is done. So yeah, that's just like all I wanted to say. This is just not something a body like this usually does. But I think it's great that we have the grant funding. Obviously, like I'm on this committee because this is something I'm really passionate about. But this situation organizationally and structurally speaking is very unusual.
And I also just want to say, like, if you look at the charter says that we have the authority to make a grant making, like to create a grant program, right? It doesn't really say much beyond that we are. So I would like to just remind us of that. And as we were talking to the legal department, just, we have to go by the charter. And that's what the charter says. And I guess then that's when language that isn't fully specific then becomes open to interpretation. But I would think that we I mean, I would hope that we would have the ability to outsource because I feel like the language of the charter doesn't say we can't.
Right.
It just says we have to create the program. So I think, I mean, to Commissioner Van Leer's point, you know, if we needed to use, I think, some of the grant funding to help us to manage the grant program, I feel like that, based on what I've read, it feels like it falls within the charter as well. So I just want to say that. I guess the next item of business is the grant survey. I do want to thank Commissioner Rodriguez for creating this. And so basically, she created this survey. I looked at it. I thought that it was pretty thorough. I thought it was more thorough than what I probably would have done. But one of the questions she did ask is if I thought it was too long. So what I wanted to do is figure out maybe some ways to condense some things. I had some ideas of maybe for some of the questions, could we do like a scale of 1 through 5? And if we can like maybe revamp it that way. And so I don't know what people's suggestions are, but I just kind of like jotted down some notes as I was reading it.
So, of course, I got myself surveyed. You know, I got activated. So, but I started with some like edits to the actual questions themselves. But as a rule of thumb, doing a scale like a response, for example, like very good, good, like neutral, kind of bad, very bad is the best way to go. I think that I was a little confused because I thought that like questions 1 through 19 felt like sort of a complete survey, and then it almost felt like a survey was going to start again. So I would say that they're basically questions 20 through 37 could probably be deleted or combined with some of the short answer questions in 1 through 19. And then there probably should not be so many. There should be short answer questions, but probably fewer short answer questions in 1 through 19. And that's what I got so far.
So this is actually, just because the numerical order goes the same, it takes you to different
Group of people.
different sets of questions depending who you were. So if you look at the top header of page 2023, it says commissioners and staff, and the first 2 pages. So when you hit this first question during the grant making process, where you a boom, 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 it'll direct you to your specific set of questions. So it is a lot shorter for each of those segments of people. So.
But then
And I'm not sure why SurveyMonkey prints that way, but so if you're a commissioner or staff, it only goes from question 20 to 28. So it's only 8 questions if you're a commissioner or a staff member. If you're the law department, it's 29 to 37. So, and it's only 19 questions if you're a grantee. So.
I thought that. Like I thought, for example, question 3 under community members could be over a scale. Like, how would you rate?
Yeah, it should be. It should be like a 1 through 5. And then the question number 2 should be the last question. Like a 1 through 5 star experience. And then option number 2 on question 1 should be grantee / potential grantee or like applicant. Because that's not.
Some of them are not.
Yeah, because that was not like explicitly stated. Number 4 you should add the sentence, please describe them after the question that was asked. 1 through 5 scale should be added for questions 5 and 6. And then specific sector requirements. For some of these short answers as well, we could list some options that might be. Yeah, exactly. So we could list the steps and then exactly add
Right, it could be
another
things like
option.
accessing the application and completing the application. You know, the budget that they have to submit. Like it could be give them a way, and you could check select all that apply.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes. And then number 9 should be, do you feel that you receive? And then that should be like another 1 through 5 ranking. And then we could do the same thing for number 8 that we did for number 10, like providing some check all that apply, and then another question. Same thing. So if your application was unsuccessful, did you receive constructive feedback on the reasons for the decision? That
Well, I can already tell you the answer to that question when you know.
right. How could
most.
the feedback process for design applications be improved? That could also be where we present some options as well, like a check all that apply option, and then add other. And then 13 and 14 should probably be 1 through 5 scale also.
I mean, we know that there were delays, right?
Yeah.
We know that we had the delay with the conflict of interest stuff. We know that there were delays. So we can
Wanna
maybe
leave it?
just no. I think we should do a scale, or
Or like, how did the delays affect you, maybe, or something about how the delays impacted them.
yeah, I think that would be a better way to frame it.
Yeah.
And then you can do a scale,
Yeah, how to do that.
like how or how do we say that? How did the delays? No, you don't want to say how because that requires an
Yeah.
explanation.
So it would be like, how much did any delays or issues related to the timeliness of communication is how I would ask the question.
Right.
And then I would say, it would be a scale of like affected me very much, affected me a little, didn't
Yeah.
affect me,
That's a good suggestion.
yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then 14 should be a 1 through 5
That
scale.
could be a scale.
15 could be a short answer or a check all that apply with another option. Organization.
That might be one I might want to leave as an open-ended.
Yeah, you could definitely do that. Because you want some open-ended, but you don't want like
You don't want
a
to
ton.
feel like they're writing essays while they're
Then you
just
gotta
trying to
read
get
it
a survey.
all.
And then it's harder, it's like more cumbersome to take the survey. It's hard to interpret the survey results.
Yeah, because you've got all these different.
Are we gonna do qualitative coding for these? Like, you know, so,
To the chair.
Yes.
Ryan is back tomorrow. He has the keys to this. If you prefer, you can assign Commissioner Kennedy and they can edit this in about 15-minute phone call and move forward with it.
can I just edit it myself?
Or if you want to do
I
that,
think
yeah.
I would trust you to do
Yeah,
that.
if you want to send the edits right to me and I'll make sure Ryan gets them and it'll be up and running by tomorrow. As soon as we get them, I'll make sure he has that as his first task.
Can I, no. What I'm asking is, can I get access to this so I can do that?
If it's possible, yes. Because I had thought that, but I'm not. I think Survey Monkey has limited access and only however many you pay to do editing. But I'll see if he can add you as an editor to this. If he can, yes.
Okay.
Because I'm not positive on that. So, but that would. It seems like everyone's in agreement with what she's proposing. So
Yeah.
to make it easier, we can just give her direct edit, or if that's not possible,
And then
Ryan can make the quick edits and.
I'll send it. Of course I'll send it.
So, Commissioner Brandler, do we want to continue with this, or do we just want to hand it over to Kate?
I am fine with Kate taking care of it.
I think I'm okay with that as well.
Thanks, everybody. Happy to do it.
Alrighty, thanks, Commissioner Kennedy.
Anytime.
All right, so what I was thinking with the next part of the business was, I mean, we just, in light of everything that's happening, the sooner we can get our items from this year's grant cycle revised, the better for us. So what I was thinking is sort of people picking things that they want to be assigned to. So I guess we'll include the survey for you. And I was thinking we would just check off tasks and then we will assign them to ourselves, and then we would come back with the next meeting, basically with our task completed.
Okay.
So what I had in my notes was the application, the pre-screening criteria, the application and the rubric. I feel like whoever does the application should do the rubric, because one of the things that I was told while we were doing it, and it made a lot of sense, is that we could have done a better job of making sure that the items that we had put on the application, that they were directly the things that we put on the rubric. So I feel like whoever's going to do the application should also do the rubric, because they're going to go side by side, hand by hand. So it will try to like literally match those up a little bit better. And then I was thinking about, and I guess we can talk about some of these, but I mean, personally, I don't know if anybody else has any other ideas, but I don't know how we could have done parts of the interviewing a little bit better than, I mean, I think the system that Sharina proposed was kind of the best that we could do under those circumstances, but I don't know how people feel about that.
I think the interviewing process, I just like wonder how, like what the ultimate benefit of the interviews were in the process. Like I felt like the written applications were much more telling.
Right.
And I don't know that the interviews really changed the results a lot. I'm not saying that like we shouldn't do them. I'm just sort of like, I just like, I guess I feel unsure about how I feel about the interview process in general.
Right.
And I think also in some, we don't have to get into specifics here, but I think it also like made things a little more complicated even in some situations. And so yeah, I don't know what, I don't know. I have a specific suggestion, but I just, in general, just kind of look back on the interview process, and I'm just like, I don't know, don't really know how I feel about that. It is typically in a grant process, you submit a written application, and then either are asked to submit either another written application or an interview. So that's typically what would happen. So interviews aren't necessarily required. I understand why we would do them. I do think that it would, especially in the interviews I did with the applications that I did not want to do. I'm like, why not? You know, I just like, why am I mean, I understand that we're trying to do the same thing for each grantee. And then also like, we're very limited on like, you know, questions we could ask and things we could say. So then I'm like, what are we like,
Right.
what is the ultimate purpose of this if the conversation can't be more free flowing and if it doesn't really change the results? So those are my feelings.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of confusion over the process from our
Yeah.
from us. You know, like what are we doing? Like, do we ask questions or not? I mean, I feel like often it was like we were supposed to ask questions, but some people didn't realize that. Part of me feels like if we set it up a certain way where the application, the written part, goes, you know, has certain questions, and then maybe there's a few additional questions that. And I feel like we need to automate it. There's like really, there wasn't that much value in us being there if we're not asking questions. And I know there are platforms to do this, and how much, like, there was a hiring process I did this summer for a coalition I helped lead. And it was really, there was a written piece, and then there was like X number 5 questions that people had to answer on video, like just from their own, wherever they were.
Yes.
And there was a strict time limit that you had 2 minutes, and I think that's adjustable.
Mm-hmm.
And this program, I think it was called Spark Hire or something. And maybe that's not the right program, but it was just a very good process. And the rest of us could just watch that at our own convenience. You know, it was very clear which questions were the written part of it, which were the interview part. And they just, and if people had technical issues, they could come here and just have some assistance. But it would save a lot of time and confusion, I think. And just if we really wanted to see people talking about their work, which I think is probably valuable, but that would, you know, yeah. So I think there's ways we could make that work. My other question is like, I think it's probably I realize we need to start getting moving on this, but also if we do outsource it, I don't want us to like spend a ton of time trying to figure out the process if we're not gonna actually do it unless that informs whatever we do with the outsourcing. But just worried that we're gonna spend a lot of time trying to figure this out. But that's my like quick take.
What do you think?
I think that one mistake we made last year, granted we were new, was there was a proposal in the rules, right, that kind of said, here's the general timeline you should follow. And we got a little bit in the weeds too early instead of saying we need a firm timeline. I think one of the immediate mistakes we can correct is setting up a timeline tonight, right? And holding ourselves generally accountable to that, right? So let's set a target that we aim for. And the rules that were proposed in draft last year, it was full commission had a program to approve that it would include all of the stuff associated with it by April 30th. And then applications would be open by May 15th and applications would close by July 1st, right? So that would mean by the end of August, hopefully we would know our awardees and we wouldn't be on that October timeline we were this year. I think part of the problem with interviews was it's not that they were necessarily a bad idea because I think the spirit was, if I recall, the conversation was, well, what about grantees who are grassroots that don't have professional grant writers or great? So that was supposed to equalize that. Whether it worked perfectly or not, we can adjust that. But I think that was the general spirit. And the problem with interviews is we tried to cram them into 1 week because of the timeline.
Yeah.
If we did it on a timeline that we knew, we could definitely plan those interviews in a more structured way where people didn't have to spend a whole weekend doing it and cover each other if we were to do that. To Pete's point, we have to have a plan A and a plan B, right? We have to be ready to go if our plan to outsource this year doesn't work out in the way we see. It doesn't absolve us of the fact that we don't want to box ourselves in having to rush to do that.
Right.
So we should co-create it. At the same time, we should work on farming it out. And even if that work turns into, well, it'll still be a sigh of relief either way, but we know that sometime in late spring, one way or the other, we should be ready to go with this, either, to make sure we're covered. So that's my suggestion is at least we take a vote to say we should have our program ready by April 30th through this committee, right? Have all that hashed out, the rubric, the applications, whatever we need to do. And then applications target would be by May 15th.
And what's the decision decision date was July what?
And so we would have applications close on July 1st. So that means all of our grading and interview, we could pre-schedule that in that time period, right, of how we would do that. And this is open to, these were something that I figured knowing the city's fiscal timeline could work, but.
But also, it wouldn't. There's nothing that prevents us from doing the scoring as they're coming in.
I just think it's important to establish hard, not necessarily hard, but really targets that we try to hit this year so that we don't catch ourselves in the same situation we did last year. So I know it's and certainly this time around, I think we can utilize staff the best as possible. Like, hey, if you get through a rubric and you're like, can you finish this up or polish this up or whatever, we'll work with you to get it done quicker.
I mean, I was hoping that we could. I was hoping we could assign tasks, bring them back in February. That would give us some time to sort of, I guess, consult with each other, figure out where we stand with it. I was hoping that we could be revised by the April meeting, which would be the second week in April. I don't know if that feels realistic or unrealistic to me. That's like 3 months.
April meeting of,
The budget and grants.
so this time in April. Right?
So if we bring the task back in February, because at this point we're not really creating from scratch anymore. We're revising and making and editing. So I think that's a little bit easier than creation. But I don't know how you guys feel about if that April meeting feels like a reasonable timeline. Would feel like it'll be a crunch.
I don't think that doesn't feel like a crunch to me, but I don't know if I'm the right person to ask about that. But it doesn't feel like a crunch to me. So I just want to make sure I understand. So before the April meeting, we're gonna decide on what the pre-screening criteria looks like.
Yeah.
But have drafts ready to go of the application and the scoring rubric, right? The interview process and what grant monitoring will look like, and then what our, I guess, program timeline would be.
I mean, we're kind of working on several things at once, so I think we're kind of talking about the timeline.
Probably, I think that timeline should come first.
So you think
Yeah.
would work?
Yeah.
I think it could work. We got a little first time around trauma going on, but
Yeah.
I feel like that could work because we don't have to create.
Of course, yeah, totally,
It's 3 months,
totally.
so that feels realistic to me.
So, that's to me too, just a question. So if we have the full commission approval by the fourth Wednesday in April, does that give staff enough time to get the application portal opened up by May 15th?
Because we're gonna work on that side of the house while
Yeah,
you're
go-
working on
yeah.
this, right? So we're gonna figure out, I'm gonna look at what we did, what tools we can possibly use that we didn't think of before. I know some of the problems, and that was the way we had to submit files was really messy. So I'm hoping I can find a solution. It's really about finding a solution for how we can receive the file in one holistic package and track that file, right? I think we had some problems with email as the delivery system because none of the systems we could find could accept, but I'm gonna start that conversation now on the logistical end. So it's just a matter of what you give me to plug into the logistics of it. So you guys don't have to worry about the logistics as much. That's on our end. You just have to tell me what is the application revisions we need to make, right? And match that rubric to the application. I agree with that as some feedback. Almost every really good grant program that I've applied to, they give you the recipe right in the application that says this is what we'll be scoring it on, right? So people aren't confused. So that's really all we need is the applications and the rubric scoring beforehand, and we'll just plug that into the logistics of the system that we can come up with between now and April.
So it sounds,
Just repeating that.
so it sounds like April 30th is when we have this grant program for the year finalized. May 15th is when the application goes live. The application closes, when did you say, Jason?
July 1st.
Okay. And then decisions come,
So it says contracts created and signed by October 31st. So now that gives us from July 1st all the way to October 31st to be done. And this year contract should be much easier because we don't have to figure out language this year. So,
wait, when are decisions released?
well, decisions would be in between that. So you have from July 1st, right? Then you would set your schedule. I know summers are hard because vacations and everything, right? You would set your schedule in that July, August block, right?
Yeah.
By
When did we do decisions this year? I can't remember.
October.
Really?
Yeah,
Was that late?
yeah, it was late.
Jesus. Okay. Do we want to say,
Let's, John, in the spirit of the school schedule,
let's have it done by like before school starts, decisions.
So by August.
yeah, by
Late.
whatever that,
Well, I go back to school the first week in August. So
You
I
do?
don't really get the summer, so.
okay.
I
All right,
was
so when do
thinking-
you think decisions should
I
come by?
was thinking, I think we're gonna need at least 6 weeks to try to meet the October 31st deadline.
October 31st or 1st?
To have under contract by October 31st is the goal, right? So everything's locked in the system. And that gives us wiggle room in November if we run into problems, right? So I like to have that window because December is when they do the cutoff. That's what we ran into before.
Even October 31st makes me.
Yeah, it's in May.
I would.
But that's under, if everything goes right, that's under contract. That means we're done for the year by October 31st.
I know.
So. But you have a 60-day window between when it closes July 1st even if you said July and August, that gives you 2 months to evaluate these and get it ready, right?
I would say
And you still have a whole month of September.
Great, love
I
it,
think we're all thinking September first, right?
love it, sure, yes. September 1st, or when the decisions come, that's perfect.
Can we say October 15th for contracts though, just to give us, or is it not really matter? As long as it's 31st.
October 31st is fine. That gives us 60 days to do contracts, and they should not take that long. And that really is.
Wait, you're saying,
So when you give me, so here's how it works. So if you give me your grantee awards voted on, so by September 1st, that would mean the last meeting in August or a special meeting before October 1st or September 1st, right? You're handing me a list of grantees. From that point on, I can encumber the money right away because it's September. The reason I had a problem last year was because of the time of it, right? We were already at the cutoff date.
Yeah.
So once I encumber the money, it doesn't really matter the contracts. That's just a hopeful to have me have the contracts all done by October 31st. But technically, after September 1st, when you hand me a list and I encumber that money, it's safe and secure. So even if a contract took until January, it would still be locked. So the main key thing is to have the vote and done by September 1st, if that's what you're aiming for.
okay, I have a suggestion. Can we have a goal in here of when contracts get sent to grantees? Because once it gets sent to them, we have a little less control over the process, but we have control in the process of sending it to them. This isn't a hypothetical
Sure,
where we're doing it ourselves. If someone else is doing it, then this isn't gonna matter. But for the purposes of planning, do we think that we should set a deadline for ourselves to send them, to focus more on sending them the contract in hopes that they send it back to us?
Some of that's out of my control, so that's why once we create the contracts,
Mhm.
right, and we send so you have a period of time. You give me the list. This is what we learned this year, right? So you give me the approved list. The next step would be I lock the money in, right?
Mhm.
At the same time, we send out the award letters, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
All right. So then the next step is the filling out. We're gonna add one thing we learned is front end paperwork, right?
Yeah.
So I want all your paperwork in the beginning, like you're
Not the
getting the
end.
grant,
Yeah.
right?
Yep,
Because that way contracts should be so easy because we don't have to act for 10 different things once you give me that list, right?
Yeah.
So that's going in the application packet is every single piece of paperwork you need to get under contract. So to your point now, you give me that list, procure the money. If I have everything and their paperwork is good, they should have their contracts out. I can do that in less than 30 days.
Right. So we'll
So
say, let's say for the purposes of planning this project, that contracts go out to grantees by October 1st, and that part of the pre-screening criteria is the
Right. I think that-
the paperwork checklist. And if they don't have that or don't send it in, then they can't go to the next round. So then that everyone gets, all the grantees get the first draft of their contract by October 1st. And then the goal being that everyone would be under contract by the 31st.
The other thing that I think will make it easier too is you're going to have, now that we know who's in this field, you're going to probably see only a small percentage of new grantees every year. I think a lot of, you'll probably see the same applicants each year. A lot of those might be repeat grantees who already have all that paperwork, so it should go much smoother in my mind. I think we've learned a lot, and so.
Yeah, even just like little pieces of the contract that should maybe at some point maybe more pre-screening.
Yes.
I mean, so there's so many things we've learned. Like
Oh,
even in this like a late part of the process, we're still learning things
Yeah,
about.
if in 2024 we have to do this whole thing again ourselves, right, and it's still an unknown, then yes, we should be able to be much more improved organizationally. So just repeating the timeline, everything to staff ready to go by April 30th was the first thing we said. Applications May 15th, right?
Applications open, yeah.
May 15th, closed July 1, which is great because I think that's a lot longer than we had this year. And then decisions by December or I'm sorry, September 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And
October 1st,
October 1st, the contracts.
contracts are sent to grantees, and
October
then
1st, yeah, contracts sent. And we should be under contract hopefully by the 31st.
Mhm.
All right.
And then I think that, I mean, after our conversation, I'd really like to pursue the option that Pete suggested in doing a combination of written and video interviews. And I'd like to suggest like scrapping the interview process that we did last year entirely.
Sorry.
I'd like to suggest just scrapping that entirely. Like I just see, looking at this timeline, it didn't change the results and it would hold us up quite a bit. So
So the what got proposed, now that I think back on it, the interviews weren't supposed to be interviews, right? They were supposed to be presentations.
yeah,
So we could include it, if you want to, a requirement to provide a presentation that answers, questions that could include video or a PowerPoint or whatever, right? And you could do the written form, and then you can also have them submit, a presentation format. It's up to you. That was the original design to make those interviews easy. Was you just get online, they do a quick presentation. It was supposed to be 10 minutes, and it was supposed to answer 5 questions.
Mhm.
But it got much more
complicated.
complicated.
Yeah. I wonder if we can maybe frame it, kind of building on what you're saying. We could ask them to do, we could call it something else, but basically like a pitch for whatever their program or project or idea is. So they could kind of promote or sell what they're doing in a different way other than the written word. And we can ask for certain criteria within that pitch. We could ask for their story of self, like why did you get involved in this work? That would be a very compelling part. What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the solution that you're offering? What evidence do you have that this is going to be impactful? We could potentially ask them to answer those questions in like a kind of pitch format, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think the important thing will be to put time limits on it and not have it be live to us so that we don't have to spend, because that's a big time suck. But I think just having clear time limits and those questions, that sounds great.
Do you think that was you the one? I was thinking, so I know Sharina was really involved with that last year, and then I was wondering if maybe you two could take the interview portion.
As long as we're looking for a platform to do it with, or I don't know if we can just research that. One question I have, I'd be happy to work on that. I think that we could be talking to experts like locally who do this work and just getting their input, like what will make this work, and rather than just creating it ourselves. And obviously we've had the experience now. I still think, given that experience, but we could talk to, for example, the Freedom Foundation people who are managing that program that they already do. What works for you all? What just I think we can learn from them. Whether or not we end up outsourcing, that would be a good way to learn about it for us. But I'm happy to do that.
And for the record, there is no conflict in asking experts their opinions on our program.
Agreed. I agree completely.
Unless they say we can't do that without funding, then we have to consider how we approach that.
Right.
But I'm certain that there are
So I'm happy
people who would help us.
to reach out.
Is there any part of this process that anybody particularly wants to work on?
Well, if Pete and Trina are going to do the interview process, Pete's going to reach out for some expert opinion. I'd be interested in the application and scoring rubric.
Okay.
I'd like, Kate, one thought I have is in terms of maybe a first step could be for the two of us
Mhm.
to reach out to a couple experts.
Sure, I'd be happy to
Just
do
like
that.
sit
Yeah.
down with them and just like, so we're,
Yeah.
because we'll be doing different parts of it, but I think, it's all
Sure.
depends on cost. So
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
we'll talk offline and figure that out.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
think I would definitely want to work on the pre-screening stuff. I feel like I've been like taking notes on that needs to go into pre-screening, and that needs to go into pre-screening. So I would want to work on that part.
And since we have 2 or maybe even 3 potential future co-chairs in front of us, keep in mind too, the quorum thing would change. So it could end up being,
Oh, right.
it could end up in 30 days being, Chair
Three of
Adams
us could do something.
and Chair Van Leer working on this, and that doesn't. So this committee may go through.
I really like Jason's suggestion of opening the application and the rubric together to the grantees. I think that will be good too. So I'm happy to update all of these things in that spirit.
All right, so I think what I would like to do is send out an email to the full committee since there's 2 committee members not present now, and then I'll note that, the list of tasks, and then put commissioners' names by them, and then ask the other commissioners where they want to go.
And then can you make sure this is on that email too?
Got it. And then I think, what do you all think about, I think I still have this big question mark around grant monitoring. But I don't know if we need to really discuss that today, because we're not even at the point where.
No.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, I think we can take
Here,
Yeah, don't overwork yourself. So keep in mind, funds aren't even out yet, and you won't have. You'll have first reports coming back. So 6 months into the program, depending on when their contract started. So until you have your first reports, then you can really have that conversation. And if a need should arise I know you had mentioned doing some program spot checks or whatever. That's something you can always do on the fly to go choose
Like
a
site
program.
visits?
Yeah, site visits or see what's up. I know.
I used to do site visits when I worked, when I used to help manage the internship program when I was a graduate student at Rutgers. That was like one of the funnest parts of actually doing that job, was actually going to the sites and actually engaging with the people.
Okay, story time for a second. I worked for a consulting firm that foundation outsourced us to decide how to deploy these funds. So all the grantees were in New York City. So there was like 3 days where all I did was go from site to site doing site visits. It was really great and very impactful and worthwhile, because it became very clear very quickly which aligned with the objectives and which didn't. So this was pre-grant, but I think site visits are a worthwhile thing. And honestly, it's a really good opportunity for us as a commission to get out and show our appreciation to the community and just have like positive interactions and so forth.
And if time becomes an issue, and it will be, because we can't predict what's coming this year, but I know we're going to get busy. You can also consider this grants and budget after we receive all the reports, doing a symposium and doing like a 4-hour symposium and bringing the grantees to you by invite if they have the time to come and just say what's going on, how their program's going. So it alleviates the need to have to go out to all these different places and facilitate that, when you can just invite them back to say, hey, how's it going? Can you just tell us about your program? What's up? So another way to do it too this year, if we wanted to do that towards the summertime.
I guess there's another, Commissioner Ridgway sent me a question about how soon someone who received the grant apply again, and what if they haven't closed out the current grant, can they apply again?
Yes, and you could, and we'll address that in the program requirements. You can say, we're only going to give money to new programs, or you could say we're open to refunding existing programs. That's a choice you'll have to make in your guidance when we put out the application, right?
I think the last one, we said that we would not award multi-year grants, but that we would consider, but we could change that up and do whatever.
Well, you probably want to consider, now that you have 2 programs working in violence prevention out there, that you're going to get people saying, we have already established a good program. Now that there's two entities and $2 million out there this year. So this grant cycle is gonna be like, hey, we feel like ours is making a difference. Can you continue that funding?
So
So
one of the things that we did talk about, we want to talk about, if someone's doing good work, we want to continue to support them doing good work. So I wouldn't want to necessarily put like an arbitrary restriction on groups
Right.
like that. And I think that if we feel
Yeah.
that we don't want to award them again, then I think that's just a decision that we make. But I would like to support organizations that are doing good work. I mean, it kind of doesn't make sense to not support them if they're actually having an impact.
the other problem we created for ourselves was the $50,000 cap because of the time, but we don't have to do that either. This year we could say if you got a really great program and you want to ask for more than 50, because our timeline will allow for us to do that correctly and create the legislation. And we'll let grantees know early that if they ask for more than 50, so it'll clearly be in our guidance, that they may have to go through a longer, more exhaustive process than other grantees who ask for less, because they will be required to go to council as well.
And also, I don't know. I'm my instinct is to keep the 50 cap to not involve the potential complications that involving council could bring. And at that point, the decision or our ability to control the outcome lessens tremendously. So that's just my feeling on that.
I know we had this conversation before, and then we followed up and had some conversation with the city council about that. So I know we have to figure that out, but I'm not sure I agree with the cap, but we can get a better sense of that and go forward.
And then I also just want to put out there that Chair Bridgeway just stated, she did a lot of interviews, and she said that she was influenced by some of those interviews, that some of the people did really well in their interviews. So she's a little concerned about not having that as some option for.
But I think we would still have a video or an interview component. We just wouldn't be, it would be automated.
It'd be like
So we still get to
questions.
hear people speak about, which I think is important.
Yeah.
Ask the right questions. That some questions are in writing and some questions are.
It's a
good
more
to hear from people.
what Pete suggested. It's just a more efficient version of
Yeah.
exactly what the
Right.
intent was
Yeah.
for the interviews to begin with, right? The interviews were supposed to be a presentation. What Pete said is a presentation. I think it should be more of like kind of like a pitch. This is what I'm doing, and this is why you should. It should be like a little more convincing. But the whole issue with the interviews was that we like weren't supposed to answer follow-up, or excuse me, we weren't supposed to ask follow-up questions. So if we're not supposed to ask follow-up questions, if it's not supposed to be a back and forth conversation, then I'm not sure like what the purpose of doing it is.
I think we can. I think that'll be addressed a little bit, because one of my, just looking at this, the end with the contracts, some of the, like, we sent the applications over to the city, to the law department, for them to draft up the contracts. And to be honest, like, part of the process with some of these, with some of our grantees has been needing more detailed information that could have been in the application. So I wonder if as we revamp the application and we ask more poignant questions and ask for more extensive answers, that actually may help as well, that at the interview process, you're learning less about the grants per se, because I think that also was a part of the reason why maybe some of the interviews got kind of long. And, so I think some of this may be able to be addressed as we revamp the application, that we'll get, I think we have a better idea of the type of information that we need from the application, because some of that actually has to go into the contract.
Another option to consider is just instead of scheduling a bunch of micro interviews, you just do a pitch day or 2 pitch days. So I've seen this with other grants too, where they do it this way with their pitch day. You're in one place, everybody's scheduled on a certain time. You keep your timetable, and then if you're interviewing 20 people, you do 2 pitch days. They get 10 minutes each. You just sit in front of them. They do their pitch. The next one comes in. If you allow for time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, and that's it. So you can do it. You can be more efficient this time than we were last time if you want to do that interview option, right? So I think pitch day is another interesting way to consider it, And you could probably just schedule that in advance, so every commissioner knows, we'll get all these interviews done in two
Right.
4-hour sessions, and that's it. you
Right,
know?
this is pitch
So-
day,
Yeah,
this is the day.
That's something to compromise. I do share Chair Widgway's, her concern, because I was really impressed by some of the people, a lot of people that I interviewed, and if it helped to understand the grant, but I do understand that logistically, time-wise, we do have to come up with something that's going to be more efficient, but we still want to be fair to the people in the community. So maybe a pitch day would be,
Totally, yeah.
revise the application so we get more information out of the application. Then they have an opportunity to make, this presentation or these questions that were given to them on the interview, and then there could be a pitch day. And I feel like that would be enough to, understand what the program is and who the people running it are.
Yeah, we'd have to plan well in advance so people can make that schedule work.
but it's easier that way, because you're only
Yeah.
planning for 1 day or 2 half days, and you're
Right.
done.
Yeah.
So,
Have a
and you
week.
can do it way in advance. You can even let the grant. You can even put it in the application. To be available on 2 future pitch days in
Right.
July, and you
Right.
have to be. If you can't be available, then don't apply, because those are our 2 days, right?
Yeah, so there's no wiggle room, like, oh, can I do this other day?
Yeah.
So, anything else on those? So, if not, what I'll do is I will send out the timeline to the full committee, and I will send out the list of the tasks that we have and the ones that we sort of prefer, and then we'll ask the 2 commissioners that are not present what their preferences are, and then I think we can then move forward with having our tasks ready on February.
Great.
I ain't throw whatever the date is, our next meeting.
Oh, when do you want this draft by?
I know that
I could do it.
I know we want to share that with the community, so I'm not sure. I mean, I guess the next meeting should be fine. Does that seem like that's too long? Next meeting.
Oh, it'll be done way before that. If I can get her access, she'll have it tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when do you want me to have it finished by? Just asking for a due date.
Is a week 2 months too soon? A week, and then get it, and then that way we can be ready and the people can see it, and then we want to get it out to the community. So. But I think, is there any other business then? If not, then I'm going to open this up for public comment. Thank you, everybody.
As a community member, I truly enjoyed your discussion. So this, I would like to use your discussion to reflect to your earlier decision on your survey questions. I object how this survey questions will be revised. If you really want people to express themselves, so you can really get into the details, since we want to encourage community member, even just a small grassroots organization, to participate, then why we want to limit their opportunity to express themselves in the post process? That's why I would not really think converting all the questions, the survey question, into scale format will be a very good choice, because we want to avoid to get all those big organizations, which they already learn all those uniform or standardized practices. We want the grassroots in the community to come up to do that. So each one may encounter different kind of difficulties. So the questions in the survey actually will help them to offer their true experience instead of just a feeling. How easy, how difficult. You actually ask them to tell you exactly what is the difficulty. What was the obstacles? This is something we really need to know in order to improve our process to be more effective and be even more inclusive. So I wish not all the questions get converted into just a scale. Yes, you can change the format instead of ask yes or no. Yes, you probably do not want every question is like a little paragraph essay questions. But if we don't get to these kind of details, how will we be able to know all the possible obstacles all these little groups can encounter? For example, right now the reimbursement is a problem. But do we want to wait till it actually happens? So if we actually have the survey will create a record. Even you guys later are not commissioners anymore, the future commissioners still will have something better, solid to follow. They know exactly this is the problem for people. Instead of just how you feel about it, how difficult, how easy. Those feelings will not help the future commissioners to work on these things and even to put in more constructive mechanism in there or to do improvement. Right now, probably you guys don't feel that because you guys have been working on it. So you hear a phone call, you get an email, but think about the continuity of it. So I wish not all questions will be converted into scale. Let them really tell you exactly what it is. Actually, this is a very good survey. You let people actually tell you exactly what they encountered. If they want to write down how they feel, they can write it down. But with this kind of format, you really learn the issues instead of just how they feel about it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I would say thank you for that. And I was just to respond. I think there may be a way to just for the ones that we're not going to do it to all of them, but for the ones that we do, we might be able to just include a box in case they do want to write something, so they can have the option. But But our concern is not making it so cumbersome for people who are already busy.
Sorry, we already know nowadays in the whole community, we do have a difficulty for people to even write a good application. So think about this as the way you train these people to think in a more realistic way of doing things instead of being lazy. Answering skills questions very easy, but that does not help you do a better job. That's the reason why I wish we do not convert most of the question into scale question. We let them to have an opportunity to actually say what they need to say. Because I believe some of them, they are willing to apply again. So this is a way to help them to avoid the same obstacle again. So they have to learn how to write it. Just like the same way we will have pitch day, for example. It's the same thing. You let them say what they want to say. Right now, it's just on the paper, on the computer screen, type it in, instead of just using a scale. Otherwise, the pitch day would not really need it. You just do something to have a scale, 1 through 5 or 1 through 10. But we know that's not really the best way to do things. So why we go lazy at the ending part of it? Why we don't continue the same good work we have been pushing through to get every point in a realistic way to have a best practice possible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Anything else, everyone? I guess with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. Thanks for that comment. I appreciate it.